I didn't know it at the time, but my music career started when I was in second grade because of a video game. And the video game was Mortal Kombat 2. Mortal Kombat 2 was a fighting game from the early 90s. It was the sequel to a game called Mortal Kombat 1, and both were controversial for being very violent. But Mortal Kombat 2 took it even further. It was like ridiculously, ludicrously violent. And then it also had this twisted sense of humor. And it also introduced more of a supernatural, almost occult element. And all of that together was fascinating to me as a kid. I was not exceptionally good at playing it. I studied it. I memorized the special moves. I knew all about it. But when it was time for me to play my friends, I was not consistently the best. I wouldn't have said this at the time, but I was treating it more as an art object or like a work of art, I guess is how you say that. And what I mean is I was interested in the characters. I was interested in the world of the game. You know, I got the trading cards. I drew pictures of the people. I liked seeing the different endings you could get by finishing the game with different people. I memorized everybody's stance. I was more into it on an imaginative or artistic level, even though I was not the best player. I wanted to be the best player, but when I couldn't quite get there, instead, I would just try to live in the world of the game. The reason I say Mortal Kombat 2 started my music career is that I was playing the Sega Genesis version and I discovered a glitch on it that altered the course of my life. Even though I was just a kid, the way I found that glitch ended up being the way I try to approach music as an adult. Okay, let's talk about the glitch. Part of Mortal Kombat 2 is that when you win the fight against the other character, then you get to do a finishing move where if you do a special combination of buttons, you murder the other person. And every character has their own version and their own special move.
Fatality.
The glitch started because I noticed one character had a unique finishing move, Sub-Zero. His finishing move had two parts. First, you had to freeze the other person, and that was one special move you had to do, and it was different than Sub-Zero's normal freeze. It had a different button combination. It used a different animation. First, you had to do that. Then, after you did that, you had to walk up to them, do a special different button thing, and then you would, I think you uppercut them, and they explode, and that's how you kill them. Sub-Zero was the only person whose finishing move was in two parts. So you could do the first part and get it right, and then mess it up and not finish it. And it was interesting to me that was different. I started to wonder, what else could you do with that? How could you make that more different? How could you play that? How could you use that to do something? And I started to wonder, what would happen if you did the first part of Sub-Zero's special move and then you did a different character's special move as the second part? And there is no way to do that. But then I realized there's one character in the game who can turn into all the other characters for 13 seconds or something like that. That character's name is Shang Tsung. Shang Tsung's special moves are that he lets you become the other characters. So then I was okay, if you're Shang Tsung and you change into a different character and you're still that character when it's time to do the finishing move, can you do their finishing moves? And the answer is yes. So then I was okay, maybe there's actually a way to do this. It was just complicated. So what I did was I set up a 2-player game where the second player was nobody, so I could just beat up on them. I picked Shang Tsung. I beat up the other character until they were one hit away from death. Then I morphed into Sub-Zero. But the morph lasts for 13 seconds. So first I would just run down the clock and wait 10 seconds. And then in my last 3 seconds of Sub-Zero, I would kill the other person and do the first part of Sub-Zero's finishing move in 3 seconds. Then as soon as that was over, I would change back into Shang Tsung, and now I had to change into a different character and then do their finishing move. And this was hard because the game gives you a time limit for the finishing moves, so this was complicated. But the good news was that I was a kid. You know what I mean? This was before I was playing guitar. This was before I was talking to girls. I had time to invest in bullshit like this. So after practicing, I got it right. I was able to do all those things, and I found out what happens if you do it. If you turn into Shang Tsung, if you're Shang Tsung, you turn into Sub-Zero. It's so annoying to have to say this. If you're Shang Tsung, you turn into Sub-Zero, you do the first part of his move, you change back to Shang Tsung, you turn into someone else, then you do their special move. This is what happens. The game glitches out. You see what happened to that character, how they're like all fucked up and they're like weird colors. I thought that was amazing. I'd like never seen a glitch like that. Occasionally I'd play games that would break and it would like freeze or something, but I'd never seen a game like produce new colors or like show you a new thing. And I just thought it was the coolest thing ever. So then I started doing that against different dummy opponents, and like each other character would glitch out in their own way. I think my favorite is Raiden. I think I like the way Raiden looks glitched out the most. At one point, I remember telling my dad about this, and he was like, maybe you should write a letter to the people who made the game and tell them about it. Or like, maybe you should take a picture and send it to one of those video game magazines. And like, that was a nice idea, but I remember just not being able to do any of that. Like the idea of writing a letter or like taking a picture of the screen, like this was before phones could take a picture. You know what I mean? Like I didn't want to have to figure out how to like get a camera and take I mean, it doesn't sound that hard. Like I'd spent the whole summer spending an endless amount of time figuring out this glitch. And then when it was like time to take a picture of it, I was like, I can't do that. But anyway, the point was just like that part of it felt like the homework part. That was like, you know, writing up the lab report or like doing the, like writing the book report about it. And I was like, I'm not going to do homework about this. So I never did that. I just spent time doing it, showing my friends and loving it. When I look back now, I can see the ways in which I think like my approach to music and my approach to this YouTube channel is influenced by that. On an obvious level, there's just like the aesthetic of glitchiness. Obviously that became my taste, like the weird bad graphics, the bright colors, the sense that like I'm seeing this thing that is like maybe not what you're supposed to see, but it's kind of interesting. Like that style visually became a big part of what I do. And then, you know, I also make all these videos about using music gear and how you can like push the music gear past what it's normally supposed to do or get it to glitch out and make it do interesting things. You know, that's kind of the same thing as like trying to push this Sega Genesis game to do something unusual. But there's a deeper thing though, which is that I think like the real influence is a style of thought where it's like that first moment when I noticed Sub-Zero had the finishing move that was different than the other characters. And I was like, that's different. How do I do something with that? I think that is the thing that actually gave me my music career and like makes me the musician that I am. I think like if I have one piece of advice, and the thing that I usually try to make my videos about, like if I make a video about a piece of gear, I don't really think it's a video about that piece of gear. You know, what I think that all my videos are really about the same thing, which is just that like anytime you have an idea that's a little bit interesting or a little bit different or a little bit weird, the first thing to do is to think, how can I make it more weird? How can I make it more different? How do I take the part of this that's a little unusual and make it a lot unusual? And I think the better you get at that, the more you'll have your own style that'll set you apart. And the important part here is that it's not just like looking for shortcuts or looking to make stuff weird for the sake of weird. Like you also have to get good at getting there. You know what I mean? Like I spent a lot of time practicing how to make this stupid thing happen in the game. You know, I spent all the time practicing guitar too. Like I think you got to take it seriously and like treat it as like a actual investment. But if you stick with it, I think you can train yourself to see things in this way where it's like, I'm going to push everything to be the most extreme version of what it is and then see how cool that is. That's also why I like bands like AC/DC or Slayer or the Ramones. It's like each of those bands is just like, we're going to be this one thing that is very specific and we're only going to be this. I mean, again, maybe it's a taste thing, but that's my taste. The last thing I want to say is while I was making this video, I had to play Mortal Kombat 2 again to get the screen recordings. So I had to like relearn how to do this glitch and like practice getting good at it again. And I discovered there's a much, much easier way to do it, which is that you can just pick Sub-Zero, do the first part of his finishing move, and then do his normal freeze move on top of that, and it will produce the same glitch.
You weak, pathetic fool.
So that's nice to know that there's like an easy way to do it. It didn't bug me. It did not bother me to find out that there's a much easier way to do it, because the point was never just to like do a complicated series of button pushes, right? The point was always to get like a certain kind of artistic result. And I think when that's what you care about, it can be useful to just have the mindset be, I'm going to push every weird thing to be the purest version of itself that it can be. That's why in some of my videos I talk about like no half measures is another version of that idea. Or like sometimes if I'm talking about a reverb pedal that has a wet-dry mix, I'll say anything less than 100% wet is weakness. You don't really need to watch all my videos because they're all saying the same thing, and it's just that.